So one of the things I've been seeing on a lot of things is people pleasers. Like we see TikToks and Instagram posts and a lot of different content brought out by the public. And it's interesting and nice to know that you're not alone in these scenarios. That I'm not the only person who's been down that path. And sometimes that could be a foolish one. When we forget, we get so caught up in our stuff, we think we're the only ones who are going through stuff, or we're the only ones who are just fed up with being selfless, only to feel abandoned and, for lack of a better term, judged by society for doing what we just think in our hearts is the right thing. I'm talking about people pleasers. This video is going to be about, nice guys, but I want to cover the whole spectrum and just people pleasers. I mean, a lot of people call themselves people pleasers, and definitions are very important nowadays. They're actually heavily missing. If you ask someone on how to define something, chances are you'll probably get a different answer for every person. But I'm going to just go through my personal experience. A people pleaser is someone who will try to put themselves last, look after their friends, their family, and they're always thinking of everybody else's feelings. Some people call that an empath, but an empath can feel when someone's also being fake or taking advantage. I think sometimes people pleasers might actually be empaths. They just haven't learned to trust that gut instinct that tells them something's wrong, or that you should be wary of the person you're trying to help, or you're raising a snake in your garden that's going to bite you down the path. But I mean, both are toxic. But I think a lot of people pleasers nowadays want to do it not because they think that they're going to get anything in return, because genuinely they think that it's the right thing. And sometimes they expect that to be reciprocated, and then they get their hearts broken because down the line they realize, no, that's not the case. And, they do blame themselves eventually. They say, what did I do? I remember when I stopped people pleasing, I hated myself for a long time because I wasn't allowing myself to see the red flags. And that's accountability. That's the one thing about people pleasers, is they do like to take accountability. So it's good to take accountability on a realistic standpoint, where you say, I should have seen the red flags. I should have expected this behavior from people. I should have expected people to see my kindness as weakness, because a lot of people do. But that's the definition we're going to go with. And there's all sorts of people pleasers, but they all tend to go down, at least from my experience, as one arc, where they look around and they realize the sunshine and the rainbows that they're trying to project out there, they can't fool themselves anymore. It's just one giant, you can only go so far. You can't fool yourself into thinking that people aren't going to take advantage of nice people, or people who want to actually authentically be communal. We all like to go on social media and virtue signal about how much we care about each other and how our political agendas make us holier than thou, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's the people pleasers who go out and act it out in real life. And at least from my experience, I stopped people pleasing because it wasn't just that I wasn't getting back payment for my good deeds, but the results was actually people looking at me like I was less than worthy to even live on the same planet and breathe the same air. Like the look of contempt I got. And is there another perspective? Maybe. But we all have negative gut feelings. Now, this other perspective I'm talking about is it's not a shoe that fits all people. Because let's put yourself in the other person's shoes, and you have a people pleaser right in front of you trying to do things, for you, right? You're probably dealing with one of two scenarios that are the most likely. One, that it is a horrible person, and they are trying to prosecute someone who would be considered a pure soul or someone who wants to do good, like a do-gooder. I remember when I was a kid and I was in that people-pleaser mentality, I would always get the same response from my older brother and why he treats me that way. And he'd always say, well, it's because you're a goody two-shoes. And it was hard because my brother was always getting into massive amounts of trouble that could have been avoided. So it was hard to take his words at face value. But you step outside of that, and people don't want to give you a straight-up answer because there goes the meal ticket. There goes the doormat. They can't wipe their shoes on that doormat anymore. So there are people who genuinely want to take advantage of people pleasers, and there are people who are very predatory and malicious and just want to see the world burn. They like to see people in pain, and what better target than a people pleaser? But there's a certain type of individual, such as myself, and it's funny because as a people pleaser, I noticed this. You have another friend who is a, self-proclaimed people pleaser, or in this case, a self-proclaimed nice guy. You feel sorry for this person and you give them everything. I remember when I was 22, I was going through some stuff. I had a really hostile roommate situation. I had a relationship fall apart. And I was still going out of my way to help a friend who had, for lack of a better term, was the source of all the drama in his life. He had successfully run a lot of people out of his life and ended up in a psych ward, ended up doing all this stuff. He was going to a foreign country for college, only to beg his family to bring him home, or he was going to go jump off a bridge, allegedly. He would always use that as drama, right? And then you do everything, and you think that this guy is like you, that maybe he's just a little forsaken by society. And then, although there's a lot of reasons on the surface and on the inside to feel bad for him, he starts taking advantage of you. A real people pleaser would never do that. A real person would never go that direction or that route. But it does. And then you realize that wolves in sheep's clothing are out there. So if you had a person like that reaching out a hand, you would be thinking, what's behind the other hand? An olive branch or a blade? And I think that causes a lot of distrust because some people have had that thing. So I'm not saying that everybody who takes advantage of people pleasers is absolved. It's just different experiences on different ends. It's interesting, but I still don't recommend people pleasing because you never know who's who. And then there's this phase in every people pleaser's life that's called the self-love, where they realize not everyone's going to be in my corner like I'm in their corner. I went through it, and at least in my area, I realized that there were some times where I got such the endorphin rush from self-love that I let it dip from one spot to the next, and I got a little ahead of myself and got a little too big for my own shoes once I had kicked these people out. And life had a good way of humbling me when that happened. Keep me in check. And it's all about being in control of that endorphin rush, like time and place. Because it does feel good when you finally have that moment where you say no more. and you start actually taking the energy you're putting on other people and putting it towards yourself, which is what I recommend people pleasers do. But keep that endorphin rush in your own vicinity. Don't go out and try to be the meanest, nastiest person on the block, because chances are you're not. But you don't want to fight monsters and become a monster in the process. And that's this whole self-love phase. And that's the thing, is it can either go really, really well, or the power can consume you and just, make you something different. Almost like if you try holding an infinity stone and you're not powerful enough, it just kind of will eventually destroy you. It's a crazy analogy. My advice for people pleasers at the end of the day, though, is to save that people pleasing for the people who deserve it. I remember when I was 24, and this is where I started really focus on building myself up. I had gotten out of a relationship, and one of my friends, who was a mailman who would come by my place of work at the time every day, gave me some counseling. And he said, you got to stay ice cold until you find someone who deserves to be treated with what you have to offer. He was right. Because not everybody deserves unquestionable, loyal person in their life. Just the way it is. So, you're going to have a top group of 2 or 3 friends who are actually going to be in your corner just as hard. Not all the time. Obviously, they have their lives. They have their duties. But you got to please the people who are pleasing you back. On everything. You should know when it's not being reciprocated. Of course, you can communicate, but sometimes you will sound a little needy. But you will know. I think that people have a really good tendency of showing and making time for the people who they care about, and then they make excuses for the people who they don't want to be. It's just the way it is. If someone's not spending the time of day, giving you the time of day, or meeting your efforts, then it's time to start retracting that good nature a little bit. Because as a people pleaser, it hurts to see people who really want to be a net positive in such a narcissistic era of society with social media get hurt. And it's getting worse because people are getting more selfish. People are getting crazier. People are getting more narcissistic. So especially moving forward, give that self-love era a try. Don't let it consume you. Stay with the people who are going to reciprocate and appreciate you for who you are. But that's all my advice. And I'm glad I was able to make this video. Thank you.